Hey, good morning, guys. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with my co-host, Jennifer Lovely. This is the Recovery Channel podcast, and it is Friday morning for those on YouTube and Facebook. Good morning for those guys that join us on podcast. Good afternoon or evening. Hey, Jen, what's happening?
Good morning. I'm doing good. How about you? Good morning. Good morning.
I'm doing great. Absolutely. Hang on a second. Okay, we're ready to go now. I keep forgetting about my big glasses for the show. So what have you been up to? Anything special?
Well, I've been just cruising through Sedona, doing some fun things. It's kind of like an adult playground here. There's lots to do, play. And my girlfriend's in town visiting, so I get to spend some time with her. So it's been a great week.
Nice. I love it. Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, my wife, she's got the whip out. She got me working this week, 7 till 6 yesterday, and now today, 7 till probably 4 or 5. So yeah, I'm careful what you wish for is what I say, or careful what you pray for, because I'm an alcoholic. So it's always, if I get this, I'll be okay. But if I get even more and get this, I'll be okay. It's never enough. Never. You know, I'm never. I always say this: I'm never going to be blonde enough, tall enough, thin enough, or rich enough. And that's just the way it goes. You know, it's crazy. Absolutely. I know what you're asking.
What?
Who's on the show today?
I am. Tell me.
Wow, we're gonna have a surprise. Derek's on the show. He's absolutely amazing guy. I'm gonna hear his story. We're gonna hear his insight and hear what he's about today. So don't go anywhere, guys. We're right back after this. Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. This is the Recovery Channel podcast, and our special guest this week is Derek. Oh, I forgot to say your second name, Derek. Is it Bylsma? Bylsma, almost right. What a great name. Where's that last name from?
It's Dutch. Yeah, it's in the northern part of Holland. My father was the only one born in the U.S. All his brothers and sisters were born in Holland, so kind of second generation.
Beautiful. Nice. I like it. So tell everyone who you are, what you do, and a tiny little bit about your journey before we get into some real questions from me and Jen.
Sure. My name is Derek Bylsma. I am one of the owners and executive director of a group practice in Chicago, Illinois, and we do individual counseling, group counseling, and then we've got a very unique intensive program for either people coming out of treatment or for people who have kind of tried typical IOPs and it hasn't worked very well for them. We started that about 8 years ago. We specialize in any type of addiction, both process addictions and substance abuse. We also do a lot of trauma work, where many of us are EMDR trained and work with a lot of co-occurring disorders. So, people who are dealing with both, some sort of addiction as well as mental health. I have been doing this for, I don't even know how many years now, but this isn't where I started. I actually, my whole life, I was an athlete and I played soccer. I went to University of Wisconsin on a soccer scholarship and then got drafted and played professionally for a few years after that. After I stopped playing soccer, I got into the business world and owned and operated a couple recruiting companies, like headhunting firms. And then about almost 17 years ago, I got sober, and everybody in my life saw that I was spending way more time, trying to work with people and help people in recovery. And particularly my wife really encouraged me, and she said, listen, your passion is in recovery, your passion's in working with people, and you need to go back to school, which was pretty scary because we had a pretty successful company. It had finally started doing well. And, but I was working all day and then I was coming home at night and spending the night, on the phone with people in recovery every night. So after I had gotten sober, my wife encouraged that. I went back to school in my 30s, my mid to late 30s, and then got a master's in clinical mental health counseling. I started at Millennium as an intern. So I started as an intern there years ago. And then I kind of worked into being hired as a counselor and then a senior counselor and then executive director. And then just over the last couple of years, we've worked out a deal with the previous owner a wonderful woman named Ann Foster, who started Millennium about 20 years ago. We worked out a deal. So myself and a partner, Warren Madison, kind of took over ownership, and we're very passionate about what we do. We, really enjoy helping people, and we're trying to get to more people. We're trying to talk to more people. We feel like we can be helpful. Certainly, we're not the answer, but we're part of a resource to help people. And so that's kind of what we spend most of our time doing, trying to help people and let more people know about us so they can take advantage of some of the unique ways we approach this.
I've got to ask you one question before we start getting into it, because as you can tell by my East Texas accent, I'm really into soccer. But what you played professionally? What team did you play for?
Yeah, so I'm a little older, so I was before the MLS was around. Back then there was a league, the top league was called the A-League, and so I got drafted. I actually got drafted to play indoor soccer in the MISL for the Milwaukee Wave. They found out I wasn't a very good indoor player. They had only seen me play outdoor. They used their top draft pick on me, but then figured out I wasn't that great at indoor, which was kind of funny. But and they said to me, Derek, look, you're not as good as we thought you were. And I said, yeah, I know that. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us? And I said, well, you didn't ask. You just asked if you paid me to play soccer, if I would come and do it. So, so I played in Milwaukee, and then I went out to Portland, Oregon, and played for a year out there until I figured out that wasn't necessarily going to be a career, but it was certainly something fun to do.
Love it.
Wow, I love that. I played soccer myself. Not professionally, but all through high school and certainly club. And then I traveled around the world playing soccer.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
What position did you play?
I was a striker. I was center forward. I really could only do one thing, which was score goals, which was very helpful because you need to score goals, but I was pretty one-dimensional. So if I wasn't scoring, then my value kind of dropped. But I scored a bunch of goals, and my teams always did really well. Went to the NCAA tournaments a bunch of times, and we're in the playoffs on the professional level and things like that.
That's not really good. It's never good for an alcoholic or an addict brain, right? It's like when we don't score, we're not very good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So one of the things that I was reading about you and I loved is you say that it all works out in the end, and if it hasn't worked out, then it's not the end. So talk to me about that philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is particularly true. I think this is for human beings, but also particularly true for alcoholics and addicts and people like that. Is I think that we have a tendency to judge something in real time and make a determination about it. We say, "Oh, well, I lost my job today, and so that's a bad thing, right? That's a bad thing." And one of the things that I learned over time is that we don't have the ability to judge things real time because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if I'll give you an example. When I first got sober, my business partner had to part ways with me. He had said, "Listen, you've been drinking and messing around the last 2 years, and you're not bringing in your share, and so we've got to work out a deal." At the time, I was devastated by that. But what ended up happening is I started another company that with a different business partner, and that company was, ended up doing much better and, helped me with my financial situation and things like that. So I look back on that and I say, was it a good thing or a bad thing that happened? Mm-hmm. My old business partner is a great guy. And I feel bad that he kind of got caught up in my world. But, if I look back on it, that's a good thing. And so it doesn't mean that things are always going to turn out better or good in the long run, but it does mean that we don't know. And so if you can kind of remain neutral when anything happens and curious and say, okay, it feels like a bad thing. I don't like the way I feel by losing my job, but maybe it'll turn out better. Maybe it'll turn out worse. I just don't know yet. So that saying is just that, you kind of have to give things time and let it play out and, see what happens. And like I said, it doesn't mean that everything always turns out better or good, but if it turns out better than we thought, and we spend all this time and energy and negativity and worrying about it and feeling bad, that's all wasted energy because the outcome really wasn't as bad as we thought we were, as it was.
Every time, yeah, I know. I have a friend that says, when anything happens, is it good, is it bad? We don't know. I had a girlfriend that wanted this job, so she was bored in her job. She wanted a job so much that she applied for a position that she was well qualified for. And then her boss, where she was, said to give her a pay raise if she stayed. So she's and and she decided to go, but if she got the job, and she didn't get the job. And she's a spiritual girl, and she's in 12 steps. And I kept saying to her, there must be a reason, because it was an extortionate amount of salary they were paying her. Anyway, 7 months later, the new company she was supposed to go for went bankrupt. She stayed where she was. She got a pay raise. So yeah, you just never know if it's good. Take me back to the beginning. Where did it all start with the alcohol and drugs or whatever it is you were messing with? How old was you and what was happening?
I mean, I think I started drinking when I was, 12 or 13, just a little bit. And really, for a lot of my life, I was a relatively normal social drinker. And I think that I always was. I always liked to party, right? But I think that as I got older, I think the way that I look at it is when I was younger, going out, partying, alcohol was a very small part of my life. It was something that I did, 5% of the time. And when I, like everything else in my life, I kind of went all in when I was doing it. But that wasn't different from anything else. And it really wasn't causing any problems in my life. And even up through, I think soccer kind of kept me on the straight path because I couldn't really drink alcoholically and still play soccer. Certainly abused alcohol along the way. And I think it was later, it was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s when it started to, really get bad. And when you were, lying about it and hiding and, just doing, kind of daily drinking. And it just kind of tipped the scale. It went from 5% of my life to 55% of my life. And then when it becomes 55% of your life, then it takes over like anything else. If it's work or you're, anything that you spend that much time in or that much energy in, then it's going to take over. And it was crazy for me because I had generally been pretty successful in the things I had done in my life. And I had this kind of, which is a typical alcoholic attitude, that if I just try hard enough, run hard enough, go at it hard enough, then I can beat it. And for most things in my life, that worked out great. The problem is this works different. Addiction works differently than the rest of them. And you can't just run over it. It's never going to break. It's never going to fall. You have to figure out a way to walk around it if you really want to try to have it, deal with it and live a, happy and content life.
Yeah, that's for sure. Did you have consequences in your active addiction?
Absolutely. Yeah. I lost a marriage. I was married to a wonderful woman who I'm still very close with, and she's an amazing woman. I got kicked out of my own company, which is nearly impossible to do, that you can be a 50% owner and get kicked out of your company. I had health problems. My whole life I had been an athlete, and I was probably 60 pounds heavier than I am now. My liver was 70% gone. They said, I probably had a year left to live. And I had a bunch of financial problems. I was living like I was a millionaire, but the reality is I wasn't paying taxes on my business to the IRS because I was constantly chasing something. And so, when I got sober, I was, tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt. I was getting divorced. I was living in an apartment with no furniture because one of my friends allowed me to stay at a place that he was selling, and I didn't have a job. And so when I first got sober, it was a really difficult time. But I was really fortunate to meet some amazing people in early recovery through the program, and I had a excellent therapist that I worked with, and just made some really good friends. And so I think that. Lots of consequences. I guess there's many more, but those are kind of the highlighted ones that are the big ones, and the ones that I think of when I think about consequences for my life. Those are the ones that I go back to and make sure that I'm in touch with, not in a way of shame or guilt, but in a way of fact, of understanding that if I drink or use drugs, then that's what happens, right? And it's not a maybe, it's not an if, it's a guaranteed that it'll get back there at some point.
Where was that point that you realized you was in deep trouble? We all have that time, day, whatever it was, when it actually hit you that you're in serious trouble. Do you remember the day?
I don't remember the date, but I do remember that one of the things that really, one of the first times that I ever thought I didn't have this under control is that I was, I thought I was kind of a big hitter business guy. And so I was trying to get this big life insurance policy for my wife, for my ex-wife. And so they made you, do blood tests and things like that. And it came back and my liver enzymes were elevated. And I talked to a couple of my buddies who are doctors, and they said, hey, listen, it's probably just because you drank, the night before, 2 nights before. Don't drink for 2 weeks and then take it again, and it'll be fine. They'll go down. So it's 14 nights before the test. And I'm like, all right, here we go, 2 weeks. And then, of course, I drank that night. But I also did the same thing on the 13th, the 12th, the 11th, all the way up to the night before the test. I knew it was going to be a problem. I knew I was going to have to, I was going to get, caught on something. And yet I just at that point could not make the decision to not drink anymore. And that's the thing that had changed. I think that really freaked me out, that still the night before the test, I was drinking, a bottle of vodka. And so it was later, that was probably a couple months after that or something, that I actually, went and got help. But I think that was the first time that I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm not in full control, because we have that idea of invincibility. We think we can do whatever we want to. And it's, I think when you're young and an alcoholic, you kind of think you can just beat the world. And people used to say to me, Derek, this is all going to catch up to you one day. And I would literally say, well, it hasn't yet. So we'll see what happens. And then it did.
Wow. So before we move on to all of the things that are wonderful about your life today, I'm curious, what was the trauma that you associated with your trauma that brought you partly into the disease?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a difficult one for me because I really didn't feel like I had any significant trauma. And it's something I work with people on, that, I think we compare ourselves to other people and say, oh, well, this happened to this person and that happened to that person. But certainly, it's consistent that we find trauma in everybody's backgrounds. And I think that, I don't know that I can point to one thing. There were some things that happened, but I don't even look at those. My parents got divorced when I was young, and we moved around a little bit, and we weren't, wealthy. So there were some things that came out of those things that, but I really believe that my parents did a great job and were a really great couple as divorced co-parents. And so I've gone through that many times, and I'm not sure that I've completely identified that. But I think it's more of a culmination of things than it is to one specific thing, but certainly, I know it's out there somewhere, and I'm sure I'll figure it out. But I really, when I got sober, I was like, I pretty much felt like I was the luckiest guy in the world until I had to get sober, because I felt like I had all these great things in my life, which was all false, right? It was all fake. It wasn't, my idea in my brain was much different than what was really going on in the outside world around me.
Crazy.
Really quick, Dr. Rob, one of the things that I notice, and mostly with addicts, is like, as a mom, we could be, cruising down the grocery aisle, and we say to our child, hold on a second, I'll be right back. And you walk just slightly around the corner to pick up the box of cereal. And for that person, that could be abandonment. That could be the end, right? So it really is all about our perception and how our brain can actually, calculate it. So go ahead, Rob. Thanks for that.
What a point. That's a great point. Because the problem we had when I got into the industry anyway was trauma wasn't as dove into as even alcoholism. But when we started putting trauma with alcoholism, every alcoholic has trauma, but define that trauma. So the hypothalamus is different to the normal drinker in an alcoholic addicted brain. So trauma as a normal kid kind of doesn't exist unless there is a huge happening, divorce, accident, plane crash, all that stuff. But the addicted brain, the alcoholic brain, mother says to child, get down off that chair, you stupid idiot. How many times have I told you can't go to college like your brother? You're not smart enough. That is damaging trauma for us. And, it's really important to define. Guys, thank you for watching the show so far. We'll be right back after this, guys. Hey, welcome back, guys. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, and along with Jennifer Lovely and Derek Bylsma. Listen, I've got to ask you two questions before we move into the amazing things you do today. What was the worst time and what was the best time of your life so far?
I think the worst time, it's an interesting question, because I think the worst time was probably 30 days after I got sober, if I was talking about real time. So this is one of my favorite subjects, actually, because the worst time in my life, 18 years ago, was when I had to go to treatment, when my wife left me, when my business partner kicked me out, when the doctors were telling me I only had a certain amount of time to live. I would have told everybody, listen, this is the worst time of my life. It can't get any worse than this. Look at that. And I would say, but it turns out that those were the best things that ever happened to me. So they were the worst time in my life, but they were the best things that ever happened to me, because they led me to all the positive things. And I would say, the best time is consistently in getting better as we go along. So I would say the best time right now is now. But I would say the best time a year ago was a year ago. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy and maybe cliche, but I do think that, there's so much to learn as human beings. We can learn about perspective, and we can, you can take the drugs and alcohol out of your life and have the abstinence, but really true recovery is where we really get all the value. I mean, we kind of get rid of the negative stuff by being abstinent, and then we get a whole bunch of positive things by being in recovery. So I feel like each year is a little bit better. Certainly some years had worse things that happened to me, but I would say just as a human being, I would say now is the best time of my life.
I love it.
Yeah. So I would love to talk about, recovery as a whole, because I think recovery is, one of the most amazing things. It's the most freedom I've ever had in my life. Now, I will tell you, my qualifiers are my 2 children that are recovering heroin addicts. So when they went into, I always say that when they went into rehab, one of them at the age of 16, and we went to 16 different rehabs, I went to rehab with them. And although I was not enrolled in the program, I was very active in their life in the recovery world, because what I had was unresolved trauma from my own childhood, a lot of trauma. And what I realized is that if I didn't get better, somewhere around the 7th or 8th rehab, I realized if I wasn't doing the deep work, my kids could never have the capacity to do the deep work, right? And so I would love to know, I love when the woman yesterday calls me and she's like, yeah, my trauma is, my sister committed suicide and that thing happened. I'm like, yes, we're in it. We get to be in the work. So what exactly, and how do you work with people, and do you work with families? Because I'm really passionate about that. So I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a group of about 15 of us, and the Millennium was kind of started on this idea of mostly process addiction, sex addiction, all those, and trauma. So it was kind of a dual. The founder is a Brene Brown. Trainer. And also EMDR has been a big part of what we've done over the years. And certainly we did a lot of experiential groups and things like that. So it's, trauma was a mainstay of it. And I think that what we've tried to do is hire a bunch of experts in different things. And then when we get to know somebody a little bit, then we can make sure that they're working with the right type of person. Some people respond to some things better than others. And so I think that's what we do really well. But I think that, certainly from a family system standpoint, my mom was a therapist in private practice, and she was a protege of Virginia Satir. And so I used to go to the Virginia Satir family camp when I was a kid in California. And so certainly learned a lot from my mom about being a therapist. But, family systems and all that was always a huge part of kind of my belief system, my own life, and my understanding of how people get better. And so, yes, we absolutely do work with families. Even part of our intensive program involves the family. So it's something we 100% believe in and know is important. And your story is exactly right. There's no way unless you have all the, I look at it like a car. And if there's 5 main things on a car, the wheels, the engine, the steering wheel, if 4 of them are working well and one of them's broken, it doesn't really matter. You can't drive the car, right? So you got to make sure everything's working if you really want to be able to have a high functioning car or a high functioning life.
Right, absolutely.
It's the same with me and Jen. We don't take a patient unless the family, the wife, the husband, mom and dad join us. And that's one of our strong points is if you're taking the patient out of the sick house and you're taking him over to recovery for 30, 60, 90, whatever it is, and you kind of, it has its own language, then you stick him back in the house and he tries to use that language. It's not going to happen because the other part of the family going, I don't know what you mean. I can't understand you. So then he falls back in the way. That's why treatment centers got a real bad name. It's like 5 or 6% success rate because the families are not involved. How would they get well? I mean, they're going to jump back. They're alcoholics looking for any excuse to relapse, unless it's a very, very strong program. So yeah, we're big on families, especially the trauma. But what we do is so funny, Derek, because when we take the patient on board, then we say, hey, the wife's got to come on board. We have a quick talk with the wife. And 10 out of 10 times when the wife's first session comes, she goes, okay, so let me tell you about my husband. And we go, no, first of all, it's not about your husband. And secondly, wait till you meet Jennifer because she gets in there. It's like, we'll push him out the way. And this is what we're doing wrong, guys. This is how we're enabling. This is your problems. This is your trauma. So no, you're not going to get on until you both swim to your own rafts and get well. So Absolutely. Tell me what you do today. Exactly what you do. I mean, I know you're a co-owner, and I know you're a CEO or joint CEO. But what's most enjoyable about your job today, and why do you love it so much?
Yeah, so I've mentioned kind of this intensive program we started years ago a couple times, and one of the opportunities that I had with Millennium is they were very supportive of new ideas, and I had kind of a unique background that I had been the owner operator of companies before, and kind of had a understanding of kind of what I thought I wanted to do, and they gave me the opportunity to do that. So one of the things that I identified as one of the issues is that when people got out of treatment, those first 30 days out of treatment, the options aren't great as far as step down programs, as far as because you go to some treatment center, you spend how much money, you work on all this trauma and you work on all these things. And then essentially, back in the past, people would kind of say, well, all right, so now go to AA. Right. And so you've done all this deep work. And then so AA is great for abstinence. It can help keep you sober. But part of the problem is that they had really, kind of gotten deep in treatment. And then they kind of were just left to say, all right, now what? And so we tried to fill that gap a little bit. And we said, look, there's, most of if you look at kind of relapse rates, the most likely time to relapse is in the first 30 days of coming out of treatment. And we developed a program, which is the other thing is we kept asking people well, why didn't it work? What didn't you like? And they'd say well, I didn't get enough individual attention. I didn't get enough individual. So we started a program where you get 8 to 10 hours of individual attention every day for 30 days, as well as you're in contact with us 3 times a day, including being able to reach out to us in the evening if you're in crisis. So you're working with 2 to 3 of us. Generally, you have a primary person and then a secondary one. So for instance, if I'm dealing with somebody who's an alcoholic, I would be the primary. And then if there was significant trauma, we'd have one of our trauma specialists working with them on the trauma side. So you kind of get these different specialized folks who are working with you. And that's what I'm really passionate about. I don't even like to, I honestly stay away from quoting any kind of numbers to go with our program because it's I think it sounds false and sounds fake, and so I'll just say that it people do really well, and it's about individual attention, it's about accountability, and really acceptance, right? Accepting where they are, and so that's our program. It's called our 3A program, and we're going to be actually going into different states. We're in Chicago right now, but we're going to be going into some different states coming up here in the next year, doing it mostly because the treatment centers asked us to. They said, listen, when we send somebody back to Chicago. So it's basically a 30-day program. It's mostly used as a step-down program. Sometimes people use it before residential, but as you can tell, probably as I get a little excited as I talk about it, I'm super passionate about it, and I've seen, like we all have, anybody who works in this, we've seen lives get turned around, and I don't think it's because of our program. I understand we're just a resource, but I do think that we're able to kind of help people get to a place and stay in a stable place, because the things I always tell people is it's easier to stay well than it is to get well. So if you go to treatment and you come out and you're doing well, then it's really important that you stay on that path and continue moving in that direction. So I would say anything around recovery, I'm very passionate about, but certainly some specific things as well.
I love that so much, because as so much of my story is my kids would get out of treatment and then immediately relapse or, run away from there. And there was really and one of the things, especially my younger son, he would say all the time, there's not enough time being spent with me. Like right. And it wasn't until he was in jail. I remember specifically he called me one day and said, Mom, I think there's things that I need to really look at. And it was mostly his past trauma that, but it wasn't until you really pushed him up against the wall that he was going to do that. And so I hear that this is a way for them to ease into the continued care, the continued work, and be with themselves while people are, holding their hand, really. I love that. So talk to me a little bit about how, it works. They get out of rehab, doesn't matter where the rehab is, and they jump into this program, and they're there for how long with you?
Yeah, so it's a 30-day program, but it's outpatient, right? It's not inpatient. So we partner with a lot of the sober living places, and they'll live there or they'll live at home or whatever. And so essentially, starting on day one, we help them figure out how to have a daily recovery schedule. So basically, we have an actual schedule that they send us every morning. So let's say I'm working with you, it's like kind of a one-page thing with time on one side and feelings and thoughts and fears and affirmations and all that stuff on the other side. And so you would send that to me every morning, and then I would look at it and I'd say, oh, okay, great. You're going to this meeting. You're meeting with me from 2 to 4. You're going to this meeting. You're going to meet with so-and-so at 6. And then I'd say, well, listen, the meeting you're going to, I know the guy who's given the lead there. So go up and say hi to him, right? So there's accountability because we're very involved in the recovery community, whether it's AA or SMART or, all these folks we know pretty well. And so there's interaction, there's interaction about their daily schedule. Then they generally have between 1 and 3 hours of sessions with us every day. And then we do a series of types of check-ins in the evening to make sure they're doing well. And if they're, that kind of continues down the road. Now, like I said, some days they might just see me. Some days they would see a couple of us or 3 of us. We really gauge it. The thing we're really good at is we're really good at figuring out what they're missing. Most people come out of treatment and they've got 90% of it right? They're good with there's just 3 or 4 things that they either don't agree with, they haven't bought into, they don't understand. And so what we do really well is we identify what those things are, the missing pieces, the potential stumbling blocks, and we help them see that. And the idea is that if we can address those before they cause some sort of havoc in your life, then you don't have to go through a relapse or more trauma to learn from these things. And so we help people identify those, and we spend a lot of time on those things. The example I use is if somebody comes out of treatment and they're all in about recovery programs, they're saying, listen, I'm going to go to meetings every day. I don't need to spend 4 days telling them why meetings are important, right? They're already in. So that's the thing is we don't need to keep re-going. And what we see is that when people kind of go into more generalized programs, that they get lost. They're coming out of deep treatment, and then they're in a kind of a smaller group IOP, and they're like, oh, I already know this. I know this. I know this. I know this. At the end of the first day, they're like, I'm not learning anything new here. I'm going to coach through this. And so our goal is to continue that progress. Make sure there's no step back, but also make step forwards. And then after 30 days, they kind of graduate, and then we talk to them about what we think they should do next. And we would recommend that they have some sort of therapy. Typically, they're welcome to do it with us. If they've already got a therapist, we'll work closely with their therapist to make sure that they transition back to them, and we'll help them with the daily recovery and things like that. We get to know these people really well. We get to know them really well, and one of the other advantages is because we encourage them so much to reach out to us. As somebody in recovery, reaching out is so important. So you're spending 8 to 10 hours a week with somebody, and they get pretty comfortable with you. So when they're in trouble and they need to reach out to somebody, it's easy for them to reach out to us because they know us and we know them. And then what we do as they go along in the program is we teach them how to use that with other people. It's not just us they can do that with, it's other people in their lives. So they're not, reliant on being able to reach out to us for the rest of their life. But people stay in touch. It's amazing. I'm sure you guys have the same thing. I get text messages or emails from people that say, hey, remember for me, today I got 8 years, and it's incredible. So so that's kind of how the program looks. There is a group component. There's a small group component to it as well. So they've got like a weekly process group, and then there's also a couple extended sessions that we do, one with relapse prevention and 3 with family work, where we bring in whoever their recovery community is, whether it's husband, wife, partner, parents, kids, whatever. So they are part of the choice of who they bring in sessions, who they think is important in their recovery circle.
I love that. Hold on, Dr. Rob. I wanted to ask one thing. You actually made a mention of the sheets that they send in every day. And what I really loved about that is that I think in today's age, for the last year, we've all been living in groundhog world, where everything is the same. And I imagine that is really helpful in the relapse prevention in the midst of COVID, because we all know that we're having an immense amount of issues with that. So I just wanted to make a point. So the listeners out there, it's really important to have a daily list or practice of what you are, what you're doing today. So anyways, I think that's
absolutely. Yeah, routine is so important, right? Routine is important. And I think that's one of the things that's been disrupted with COVID is our routine has been disrupted. So, whenever we're talking to somebody kind of general, when we're kind of giving general, information or we'd say, make sure you're getting into a routine. And by doing this with some accountability and making sure that we're going to know if they don't send it to us, it's forcing them to stay in routine, not forcing them, but encouraging them to stay in routine, which is, we all need it right now.
Yeah.
Hope you're enjoying the show, guys. We'll be right back after a sponsor, Recover Me Coaching. Welcome back, guys. My name is Dr. Rob, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. David Bylsma's on the show. This is Recovery Channel podcast. Okay, so name me, Derek, if you can, along your life in the recovery world, 3 mentors or 3 people that inspired you to be who you are today.
I would say maybe with a couple, I'll give initials because I don't want to out people, but certainly Ann Foster, who I met early on in recovery, was the founder of Millennium, and way before I went to Millennium, I was referring people to Millennium way before I went back and decided to go to school. So she was somebody who's certainly a very important part of my life and has taught me a lot. Another one would be Jim O, who is a guy who sponsored me and just an incredible man. And one of 3 people that I introduced at my wedding. We were kind of introducing people, and he's one of them, which I think took somebody by surprise. And I said he's my sponsor. But and then the last one I would say is my wife, my current wife. I ended up getting divorced. I got remarried, and my wife has been super important in everything that I do. She's very even keeled and very encouraging. And realistically, she wouldn't have. I wouldn't be in this world if it wouldn't have been for her. But all of this has been such an important piece, not just Millennium, but it's been such an important piece of my own recovery that I'm just around this all the time. And I think that, some people struggle being around it all the time. And for me, I think it's just helped my own recovery and made it easier for me to stay engaged and excited about it, right? Like fired up about it. And because you kind of see people getting some value out of it.
Yeah, I love that. So much of the work that we do, I always say that I feel like I learn more from my clients than I do than they learn from me, right? Because there's just they have so much innate wisdom inside of them, and so it just helps us, I think, as practitioners, coaches, therapists. So talk to me a little bit about what was so uncomfortable. So I have this theory, and I always ask this. We're like the chicken inside the egg is our soul. And when the chicken is trying to hatch and get out, it's like the soul is trying to, say something, it wants to say something. So what was your soul so uncomfortable with that it needed to get out? And what did it need to say when you were first in recovery or becoming recovered?
Yeah, I think my big things were surrounded by honesty and probably humility. I think that over the years I had grown up a pretty humble kid, and then I think as I started to have more success in things, whether it was sports or business or kind of anywhere along the line, I think I started to believe my own BS, right? And so I think that it's funny because the things that really bother me about people now were things that or things that that I wouldn't want to have in somebody close to me, are things that I was really not good with, and honesty was another one. And as I look back, I wasn't just, you start by lying about whatever you're trying to hide, but that just filters into all these other areas of your life. And I'll tell you a funny story. I think you'll appreciate this. When I first got sober, I was telling people, I'm like, listen, stopping lying is just as hard as stopping drinking for me. Like it's just weaved into everything. And so for the first probably 4 months in sobriety, I carried around a pen with me. And every hour that I made it without lying, I would put a little mark on my hand. So if I made it from 9 to 10 without being dishonest, I'd put a little mark on my 10. And so at the end of the day, I'd have 17, 18, 19 marks on my hand, and that was my goal every day. It's like I don't need to fix everything I did in the past, but what I do need to do is make sure that that for every hour in the day, there's a mark on my hand. And so people would always ask me, like, "Why is your hand all marked up?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it. It'll be all right." So I think those are the things. Humility and honesty are probably the things that we're trying to get out. And I guess the other thing is I just had such a need for chaos. I had such a need for I would prefer good chaos, but if I couldn't have good chaos, then I'd take bad chaos. And so I think that was the other thing, is I just felt like there were so many times in life that was instant chaos. If I was drinking and doing stuff, then that was instant chaos. So when I was bored, and really I wasn't even bored, I just didn't have enough chaos. So
right. I love that story so much. That's so great. I love the honesty in that.
Yeah, we're coming to the end of the show, unfortunately, Derek. So a couple of things. I want to thank you so much, obviously, for coming on. The numbers are amazing right now. People are listening to you. It's awesome. And thank you for being who you are and what you do. It's amazing how you've come from a professional soccer player to helping people, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, with the ripple effect, because we never know how many people we help. And just good luck for the future. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me, and back at you. I love what you guys are doing. I know a number of people who know you all, and I know you do really good work. And so appreciate you getting the word out there and helping people. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, Derek. It was lovely to meet you. And I really just want to acknowledge the joy that you have in this work. It's palpable. And I know that you're out there really supporting human beings to really deeply recover, not just recover on the surface of alcohol and drugs, but really get their souls back. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Stick around, guys. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the show, guys. Thank you for watching everything. That was a great interview and a great talk by Derek. Just love him to bits. Love the stuff he does. Guys, you want to become a recovery coach? Oh, yeah. It sounds interesting, doesn't it? We have a program. Recover Me Coaching has a 100-hour program. Some are practicum, some are online with us live. That starts in the 1st of March. So it's coming up. Get your emails in. Visit the website. I'm just going to put the website up so you can see it, guys. There we go. So visit the website and get some more details. All emails to all the people we have emails addresses already will be sent out next week. So if you want to join that mailing list, guys, jump on, contact me or Jen on our platforms or messages or email us direct, and we'll stick you on that email list and you'll be receiving that next week.
Awesome. So excited about that. Spending 10 weeks with some people, getting to know them deeply and training them. I love that.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll be back on Monday with a brand new guest. Have a fantastic weekend. And from me, we'll see you soon.
And from me, see you later. Have an amazing day. Bye.